Here's 16 of my favorite tips for creating a workshop that's safer, more efficient, and most importantly, more enjoyable. Now, I've been on this journey almost 15 years and I didn't do these things all at once. In fact, one of them I still haven't done yet. So it's a process. Just pick one or two that you can tackle right now and get started. Well, one of the biggest factors in putting in long hours in your shop is comfortable working conditions. And if you're like me and you work in a garage, you need to pay attention to your garage door. The upgrade most people think of first is simply insulating your garage door panels. A bare metal garage door is going to radiate heat in the summertime and rapidly lose it in the winter. Comparing the temperature on the outside of this door to the inside shows how much difference these panels can make. This door already came with the panels installed, but in my previous home, I was able to install them myself just using a DIY kit that I bought online. The kit just comes with these thick styrofoam panels that fit right inside the channels of your garage door. You can cut the foam panels pretty easily with a utility knife, bend them into place, and you're good to go. And insulating the door is great, but you don't really get the full advantage of the insulation if the hot or cold air can go right around the door through gaps. So my garage door here in the shop was completely replaced a couple years ago, but my other garage door is much older and not in great shape. You can see here how loose the door fits against the seal and how much light shines through. And here's a shot with the lights off so you can really see the extent of the issue. And I've definitely noticed that this part of my garage is typically colder in the wintertime than my shop is. These are green hinges and they replace the hinges on the outside edge of your door, and they're spring loaded, which means that they push your garage door tight to that seal and close up any of the gaps that you may have between the door and the opening. So these hinges are super simple to replace. All you need is a ratchet, and there's just a couple rules you need to follow. The first is the color of the springs. Gold springs are for doors over 12 feet wide, and the silver springs are for doors under 12 feet wide. And the second rule is look at the number on the bottom of the hinge, 1, 2, and 3. Number 1 goes here, and then 2 and 3 as you work your way up the door, and we're not touching the very bottom or the very top. We don't need to replace those. Oh, and there is one more rule. Make sure to disengage the garage door. That way no one can accidentally open the garage door while you're working. Now I can just remove the 4 bolts holding the old hinge in place. All right, so now just remove that roller. You can put this into the new hinge, that's just fine, or you can replace them with brand new ones. This is not going to affect the way that the hinges operate. It's not really going to help anything with the temperature, but what it will do is make your door run quieter and smoother. And a set of these replacement rollers costs like, I don't know, 20 bucks, so you might as well replace them while you've got the hinges off. And I can insert that roller right into the new hinge and then fasten it all back to the door using the same bolt and bolt holes that held the previous hinge in place. I've got 5 more of these hinges to install, so to speed things up for the sake of time, I'm going to be switching over to using my drill with a nut driver. Again, just make sure to pay attention to the number on the hinge as you go up, because each one is a slightly different shape and you don't want to get the hinges out of order. And if you're not sure if green hinges will work on your garage door, they do have a compatibility chart right on the website, and I'll go ahead and throw a link to that down below as well. So based on how this is going, I think if you did have a drill and a socket, you can replace all 6 hinges in less than 15 minutes with very little effort. All right, so now that these are installed, check this out. This was my problem area. The door is firmly pressed against the seal, and the seal can do its job. And while you're at it, don't forget to check the weather seal along the bottom of the door. These seals go bad faster than you think, and in no time, they're all cracked and in pieces, falling out, leaving big gaps under the door. So these can be a pain to pull out sometimes, but if they are cracked and brittle, you can use that to your advantage and just pull the seal out in chunks. Or you can use a utility knife to cut it up and pull it out piece by piece. Once the old seal is out, you can now clean any debris out of the track with a brush like this, and then lubricate the track with some silicone lubricant or with some soapy water in a spray bottle. Okay, the new seal can then be slid in from either end of the garage door. Feeding this in from the side requires some patience, but here's what I learned. This process went really well at first. The lubricant worked until I got to about halfway, and then I could not get it to budge anymore, and I had to go recruit a helper. I'd say if you're doing this on a single car garage door, you can do this whole process by yourself, no problem, but on a 2-car door, you're gonna need some help pulling the seal down as you feed it into the track. Once the seal is fully in, I can cut off the excess right at the edge of the door, drop the door, and, well, kiss those gaps goodbye. I think we can all agree that getting the most out of your shop requires having a plan and being intentional, and that can really be applied to the rest of your life, including your health. But I have work to do, a YouTube channel to run, and 3 kids that seem to have to be in different places at the same time. So it's real easy to let that health piece slide, especially, when you can just lay in bed at night and Google your symptoms, and then spend the rest of the night worrying about what you saw. But that's where the sponsor of this video, ZocDoc, can help. ZocDoc is a free website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors. You can choose the one that's right for your needs and click to instantly book an appointment. And you can use it for mental health, dentistry, vision care, skin care, and anything in between. ZocDoc makes it easy to book in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers. You can filter those providers by specialty, insurance, location, and you can even read reviews so that you can pick the care that's most convenient for you. And one of the coolest parts is that when you find a doctor you want, you can see their actual appointment openings, choose the time that works best for you, and instantly book a visit with just a few clicks. And ZocDoc helps you get appointments fast, typically within 24 to 72 hours of booking, and sometimes even same-day appointments, which that's awesome. No waiting on hold or waiting 3 months for an appointment slot to open up. So stop Googling it and get the care you need. Go to ZocDoc.com/MWA Woodworks to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. And thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get back to working on that shop. It's time to consider one more upgrade, and this one's not about controlling the temperature, it's about workflow. I'm sure most of you have garage door tracks that look like this. These tracks are usually pretty low. The ones in my garage are just about 7.5 feet off the ground, and they can make moving longer pieces of lumber a real hassle, especially if you have your garage door open. The overhead space is just very limiting. So back when I replaced my garage door in my shop, I had them raise the tracks about 18 inches higher than they were before. This makes a very big difference in overhead clearance and gets those tracks pretty much completely out of my way. So this is definitely work that I would let a garage door company do, but keep in mind that you don't have to replace the door or the motor to do this upgrade. You can have them just raise the rails up and adjust the tension on the spring, and that's going to be a lot cheaper. One of the most common problems to solve for when setting up a new workshop is how you're going to power your tools. Now, where I live here in America, a standard garage is going to have a couple of power outlets in the walls and maybe one in the ceiling that's going to power the garage door opener. And that doesn't leave you with a whole lot of options outside of adding new outlets to your workspace. But before you consider adding anything new, you should absolutely identify everything that you have available to you. At a bare minimum, I think you need to have one 20 amp circuit or two 15 amp circuits freed up for you to use. The reason is because if you have a 20 amp circuit, you can handle running most beginner power tools along with some form of dust collection like a shop vac or a dust extractor. But trying to run those two tools at once on a 15 amp circuit could easily land you in the dark. Yeah, ask me how I know. And if you're the only one working in your space, it's very rare that you'd ever have to run more than one tool plus dust collection at the same time. So having additional outlets is really more of a convenience and a way to prevent having extension cords laying on the ground becoming tripping hazards. It's really easy to identify whether your outlets are 15 or 20 amp. 15 amp outlets will have 2 vertical slots, and 20 amp outlets will have this little T-notch on the neutral side. And it also pays to go and double check the breaker in your electrical panel just to confirm if it says 15 or 20 amps, just in case the wrong outlet was installed by the previous homeowner. And after you do that, the next thing to do is to check to see how many circuits are feeding the outlets in your space. You can do this pretty easily with one of these little outlet testers. Just plug it into the outlet and it should show like this that you have power going to the outlet. Now go back and flip the breaker off and then verify that the power to that outlet is indeed off. Then take your outlet tester and check all the other outlets in your space. If you test the other outlets and none of them show that they have power going to them, then everything is being fed from that one circuit. But if any of them light up and show power, then that one is being fed from a different circuit. And that's a good thing. Okay, so one trick that I like to use if I have multiple circuits and I want to keep my outlets straight is to use these little colored dot labels to identify what outlets are on what circuits. Any outlets that are on the same circuit get the same colored dots. And that way, when I am running multiple tools in different outlets, I know to avoid the same circuit so that I don't trip the breaker. And if you're in a situation where tripping the breaker is going to kill the lights, then you should have one of these rechargeable night lights somewhere in your shop. What's really cool about these lights is that they only come on when the power to the outlet that they're plugged into is turned off. And it doubles as a little flashlight so you can take it out of the outlet and make your way back to your electrical panel to reset that breaker. And over time, as your tool collection grows, it's going to be time to consider adding new outlets to your shop, especially for the larger power tools. And so here's a quick rundown of how I added power to my shop. I have a power drop right next to each of my larger stationary tools, and each is on its own 20 amp circuit. In this case, I have two circuits, one that feeds this 240 volt outlet that is dedicated to my planer, and the other one feeds this outlet. You can also see my colored dots here. I also have circuits on this wall for running my 3D printers and a separate 30 amp circuit for running my large dust collector. Then I had a sub panel installed in my basement that exclusively runs the power to my workshop because I didn't have enough space left to add additional breakers on my main electrical panel. And keep in mind, if you want to do this upgrade in your shop, having an electrician come out and do it all at once versus just upgrading one or two circuits over time is going to be cheaper. So start thinking and planning out where you'd like to put your tools and how many outlets you'd like, and then add one or two extra just to future-proof your space. If you've ever measured twice, cut once, and still got it wrong, it may be because you're just not cut out for this hobby. Or it could just be poor lighting. Being able to clearly see your cut lines, layout marks, and operate your tools safely is all very critical. When I first moved here, this garage bay was lit with one light bulb in the ceiling. Definitely not ideal for a work area. As I started to set up my shop, I upgraded to some off-the-shelf fluorescent shop lights from the big box store, which you can see in this video from my early days on YouTube. The light was fine to see my work, but the color was off. The color temperature was way too cool, and the light output wasn't as bright as I wanted it to be. A couple years later, I upgraded to LED light strips that I retrofitted into my original shop lights, saving me some money and keeping these light fixtures out of the landfill. But if you're starting from scratch, this process will be way easier because there are so many good options out there. And here are 3 things I'd focus on when setting up optimal light in your workspace. Ideally, what you want to have is the most light concentrated right above where you do your work, not necessarily in places where you store your lumber or all your kids' toys. I have 6 light fixtures on the perimeter for general lighting, but I have these 2 fixtures specifically above my table saw and my workbench to provide extra concentrated light right on those areas. The next thing to consider is having the right kind of light, and definitely today the most popular option is going to be LED lighting because you can get the same amount of light output for lower power consumption, and that's going to allow you to add more lights to cover different areas of your shop. And definitely look for lighting that has a color temperature between 5,000 and 5,500. That's right there in the sweet spot, right in the middle, closest to natural daylight. This lets you see the accurate color of wood grain and the differences from board to board, and is really helpful when mixing up dyes and stains to see their true color effects on your projects by removing any of that red, orange, or green, blue cast from the warmer or cooler lighting. All right, so just to illustrate this is what things look like in my properly lit workshop. And what I'm gonna do is take my camera, I'm not gonna change any of the settings, and we're gonna go on the other side of my shop wall to the part of the garage where we park our cars and let you see the difference. This is completely walled off from my shop, but you can see how much darker it is in here, and the color temperature is not quite right because the light fixtures don't have the same color temperature. But this is what I would consider very normal garage lighting. You can see the 2 4-foot fixtures that I have up above me here, and then there are 2 more that you can't see behind the camera. But yeah, this is it. And the last thing to look for if you want to get up and running quickly is look for lights that can be plugged into a power outlet and daisy chained together. And this will be way easier if you convert that old light socket into a receptacle. So if you have access to your ceiling space, you can actually swap out your light box for a box that accepts a power outlet. Or an even easier way is to buy an adapter like this that turns that light socket into a power outlet. And now you have the ability to control your new lights with the same switch that your old lights were on. And here's a bonus tip. If at all possible, make sure that your shop lights are on a different circuit than your power outlets. That way, if you do overload a circuit and trip that breaker, it won't be lights out for you. And if you're not sure and you want to test whether the lights in your shop are on a different circuit than the outlets, go to your electrical panel, find the breaker that controls the outlets in your shop, and flip that breaker off. If the lights stay on, you're good to go. Another way to upgrade your shop is to maximize every square inch of space using storage and organization. Now, I have a lot of thoughts on this subject. So many thoughts, I've actually done 2 whole videos on this topic already on the channel. So instead of repeating what I talked about in those videos, I'm gonna talk about 2 new things, and I'm gonna link those 2 videos in a playlist down below so you can go back and watch those later. And I do hope that you take the time to go back and watch them because it'll give you a better understanding and it'll also help out the channel. All right, so let's talk about shop layout. I think this is something people worry about a lot, how to best optimize their layout. And the biggest problem that I see people have with this is they try to imagine an entire project workflow from beginning to end. Don't do that. That's thinking way too big. One day you might spend breaking down plywood, another day milling all your lumber, another day doing just assembly and glue ups. And so think about it more in terms of what activities do I do the most often in a given day, and then try to keep the tools around certain areas that support that task. So assuming that that explanation was as clear as mud, here's some examples. I keep my joiner and my planer together in the same spot in the back of the shop. Those two tools belong together because they're part of the same milling operation, but I keep them in the back because I don't do milling on every single project. In fact, probably most projects, because lately I've been working with a lot of sheet goods. Another example is my assembly table. I do assembly on pretty much every project, so this table is more front and center in the shop, and all around that area I keep things like clamps, screws, and glue because those are the things I'm going to need most for that process. The second thing I want to talk about is 3D printing and how that's come into my work in the last couple of years since I made that last video, and how it's impacting my shop. I love 3D printing and all of the possibilities that it can open up, especially when it comes to creating really niche solutions to problems. So this fence that I use at my workstation is a simple example. I wanted to be able to get this thing up on the wall, but they don't sell any type of solution to hold this or protect it. So instead I modeled up these two simple parts, a little tray that holds the bottom and this clip that locks into the groove on the track. And now I can get to it quickly when I need it and put it back when I'm done. This took pennies of filament to make and maybe 90 minutes to model this out in Fusion 360. And this design is a variation off the clips that Drew Witt sells for the parallel guide, so thanks Drew for the inspiration. And now when I need a custom dust port to adapt a tool to my shop vac or my dust collector, there are so many solutions available to download and print. And there are lots of different solutions for drawer organization. Now, I've made solutions like this out of wood on my channel before, and they do take a good bit of time to fit out, and they always end up being a little bit too bulky. 3D printed bins are more modular, and they don't waste a lot of space with bulky wood. And yeah, there's 100 other solutions that I could have come up with that don't involve 3D printing. But having a 3D printer does completely change how I approach problem solving, not just with organization, but in my workflow as well, making these little jigs and tools that help me get my job done better. And I think it's a game changer, at least for me. And now I have one shop upgrade that no woodworker ever likes to talk about because we all hoard a little bit, and that's getting rid of the stuff that you don't use anymore. So one of the biggest reasons that your shop can be so hard to organize is because it's cluttered with stuff that you rarely or never use. Tools that you have more than one of. Tools that you used to use, but you upgraded to something new and never got rid of the old one. Even wood scraps can get out of control if you try to save everything. And with tools especially, there's a good bit of value tied up in those. And I'm a big believer in using services like Facebook Market and Craigslist to resell those items and get some of that money back that I originally spent. And now that money can be reinvested in new ways, even purchasing new tools I've never had before. Wood, especially scraps, are a great thing to give to new woodworkers. It's really expensive to get a hold of these days, and people are really appreciative just to get some of this stuff so that they can practice or make small projects with. And the biggest upgrade I think you can make for your shop and for your health is to invest in dust collection. It's perfectly fine to start out using something simple like a shop vac. Just be aware that the small size means they usually fill up pretty quick and need to be constantly emptied. But one easy upgrade that you can make to your shop vac is to add a dust separator. One thing about shop vacs is they're not really designed to run for long periods of time, so keeping that filter clean and that motor running at peak efficiency is going to help it last a lot longer because it's not getting clogged up with all that dust. You may also want to consider jumping right to a dust extractor. These are light shop vacs, but designed to run for longer periods of time and have built-in enhancements like HEPA filters and remote tool triggering as standard offerings. Then once your shop is a little more established and you have bigger tools that produce a much higher volume of chips, you should look at an actual dust collector that can feed multiple tools and do a much better job of keeping dust out of the air. Dust collection is actually another topic I've gone into in a lot of detail on this channel already, so I'll link another video down below that talks about when and where to use each one of these three solutions, as well as some other ways to control dust in your shop and keep it out of your lungs. So one upgrade I'm not really covering in this video is flooring, and that's because I haven't upgraded it yet. Yep, still working on bare concrete floors in this shop, which I know is not good for my back, knees, and feet. But I do think I know which solution is going to work best for me when I do get around to that upgrade, and that is horse stall mats. I can get these mats at my local Tractor Supply store. I've actually already put a few of these down in my exercise space, and they have been amazing. These things are made out of ground up tires, which makes them super durable and about 3/4 of an inch thick. And these can easily handle any of my larger tools rolling around on them, but also any tools that I accidentally drop on the floor. These mats are 4 foot by 6 foot in size and run roughly $50 a piece, so not a bad price per square foot. And I know from previous experience, I can cut them with my track saw, which is going to make fitting out my shop floor exactly how I want it so much easier. Well, that's it. At least I think that's it. Let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are, or if there was an upgrade that I didn't mention in this video that you've been considering. And until next time, have fun in the shop.